Okay, so just want to go over a big overview of cybersecurity topics. So cybersecurity is when somebody's trying to attack you, but attack you through your computer. So cybercrime comes in different forms. There could be harassment, which is cyberbullying, usually between minors. Cyber harassment is between adults. Cyber stalking is more serious in nature. Stalkers demonstrate a pattern of harassment going after the same person repeatedly and pose credible threats of harm to them. Phishing is when someone is proactively sending things to you and therefore your computer to get information out of you. So for example, email messages or instant messages being sent to you. It appears in the form of somebody that you're doing business with and designed to trick you into providing usernames and passwords. So you might get some, I got this actually from not Amazon.com, but somebody pretending to be Amazon. The email address was like amaz.on.com service department, and they said there was an issue with my account and they wanted me to, they gave me a form to pop up. I had to type in my email and password and send it to them. Now, if I typed in my email and password and sent it to them, they'd say, okay, everything's fine, and now they have a copy of my password. So, so you want to be careful of that, and then farming is also, redirect you to a phony website if you type in the URL. So for example, if somebody hacked into a local bank's computer system and you typed in the bank name, www.citibank.com, and hit enter, and they could then have control over redirecting you to a different website. You now think you're on that bank's website, and you start providing information for them. So that's what's called farming. Adware and other malware. So suspicious emails and notifications appear to be in the form of a site administrator asking you for a password or even threatening to suspend your account if you don't call them and provide them with your email and password. So phishing and also the please send me money scams, a lot of people get those. So you got to be careful with that. Okay, clickjacking is, so a lot of these slides are just definitions of cybersecurity. This is kind of like an introduction to cybersecurity. I'll cover more details in another lecture. But clicking on a link allows this malware to post unwanted links on your page. So this would be where they could be, you get an email from somebody that says, click on this link. You click on the link. This email is now on your computer. When you click on that link, this could allow that link could be connected to a web page that's downloading software onto your computer with your permission, because it's on your computer. You click on it. So malicious scripts. A script is a program that follows a certain number of steps. The program could be create a file on your hard drive, take content off of the server, put it into that file, and then hit save. And then after the file is saved on your computer, then it could issue a command to run the code in that file. And now that file is running on your computer as if it's you running it, which means you have permission. It can now open up files on your computer, send them back to a server, and save them. Okay. Could also log into your email account if they wanted to send spam to your friends. So this is a friend of mine had a blast email went out to a lot of his friends saying something like, Jim recommends that you buy these, diet pills or something like that. And then all his friends called him up. Oh, you think I need to be on a diet? So they're trying to sell the pills and figuring if your friend recommended it, you'd buy it. So that's something that could also happen. Okay, so computer fraud is schemes that convince you to give money or property to a person. And shield bidding is a fake bidding that drives up the price of something. If you go on Amazon.com and you're bidding on a product, a robot not a real person, can bid against you to make the price go up. Okay. So, let's see, identity theft is where somebody gets your name, your social security number, obviously if you're American, social security number, bank and credit card information. And if they can do that by getting the password to your bank account, your social security number, they could then take that information and take out a loan against your house, spend the money from the loan, and then you get stuck with paying off the loan. Keyloggers are where they have software that runs on your computer that tracks every time you strike a key on your keyboard. It's being written out to a log. So if they can log the keys on your computer that you're typing, then you could go to your legitimate bank account, type in your legitimate email, your legitimate password, do some banking, log out. They now have a copy of your email and password. If your computer's having key logging software running on it. Okay, so hacking is where, now this is interesting. This is a time, definition has changed over time. So hacking is sometimes, like Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook describes hacking as putting a website together really, really fast, like in a day or two, hacking it together very quickly. But back in the 1990s, hacking meant to break into a computer's security to get access, sometimes maliciously, sometimes not, getting access to a computer. So there's white hat or sneakers attempts to find security holes in a system to prevent further hacking. So this is where you would hire somebody to say, could you try to break into my computer system, and then they find ways to break in, they tell you about it, and you patch them up. Black hat or crackers, people cracking into the system, are coming in with malicious intent. They might be trying to get into your computer system, find your customers' passwords, get into, download the customer's database information about your system that you don't want getting in. And gray hat is illegal, but maybe not malicious in intent, just trying to get information. If you're trying to start up a website and you can get a download of all the people who currently are on Facebook and just send out a link to them, you could spam them and just say, please join my website. And it's not malicious, but it's really, you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, so a couple other definitions. Like I say, we're covering a lot of definitions today, but hacktivism is hacking to make to be an activist using hacking to get your point across. So hacking to make a political statement. A data breach, so this is really if you have a website that has an associated database with it, a database of all your customers, emails, addresses, passwords. A data breach is when sensitive data is stolen and viewed by someone not authorized to see. So they got into your website. Again, this is now if you're a company, not a person sitting at home. They got into your website. They were able to access data in your database that they're not supposed to access. That's a data breach. Okay. Cyber terrorism is an unlawful attack on a computers and to intimidate government or people, saying, we'll turn your website back on as soon as you pay us a certain amount of money. That would be called cyber terrorism. Okay, all right, so different types of poison. We'll go through each one of these. What is spam, what is adware, spyware, viruses, worms, Trojan horse, and rootkits. So these are all different types of poisons. And just to go over some definitions of like what is spam and what are cookies. Spam is, if you know, is that luncheon meat that's kind of like ham. It comes in a can. And it was popular when somebody would send out a broadcast of emails to many, many people, and very likely you're not interested in them. They decided to call this spam. So it comes from that lunch and meat spam you see in the supermarket. Cookies are on a web browser. So if you go to log into a website and you type in your email and your password, sometimes you'll hit enter and it'll ask you, would you like me to save your password? Now what is happening is your web browser, let's say you're using Chrome. Your web browser on your computer system, Chrome, has space in it, has storage in it, and it will save your password. So for example, if you go to Facebook, www.facebook.com, you type in your email, you type in your password, you hit enter, and it says, would you like me to save your password? If you answer yes, it will save your email and password in storage associated with Chrome, that one particular browser. The next time you go back to that same website, Facebook in that case, you type in your email address, it could read out of the storage that said this email address has this password, so I'm going to fill in the password so the person doesn't have to type it in again. It's convenient to not have to type in your password if your browser remembers it. So when you say yes, save my password, that means anybody can sit down at that computer, go to that website and type in your email and they will get in. So you should only say yes if it's a computer that's at your house that you know nobody would ever sit down and try to log in maliciously as you. You don't want to say yes, save my password if you're at an airport and you're about to get on a plane and you just want to check the website. You don't want to say yes to that. Next person who sits down could log in as you. Okay, so that's really what cookies are. And cookies are popular to do a lot of these. Okay, so spam, like I kind of said before, it's named after that luncheon meat that kind of tastes like ham. Spam is sending mass unsolicited messages. These messages are called spam, and they come in other forms. They could be instant message, fax, text spam. Doesn't have, that's even robocalls spam. You could get spam on your telephone too. All kinds of spam. Okay, so cookies, I just kind of went over. The way cookies work, they're part of your browser, so they're generally intended to be made for good use, but you can install the cookies without, they can be installed without your permission. A website, if you go to a website, that website could start creating cookies for you without your permission. So when you were asked the question, would you like Chrome to remember your password, and you said yes, that's fine. They didn't have to ask you, would you like this to be saved? The website, the server could just start saving cookies on your machine. So if you go to a website that's malicious, website looks great, pops up, and starts creating cookies on your browser. Then they could go back to your IP address, your machine number, and go to that browser, and then those cookies are installed. Okay. Okay, and then the data that's in your cookie tray, which is the collection of all the cookies for your browser, has a lot of information about you besides passwords. Products that you buy and information like that could also be in cookies. Okay, so adware is when you have pop-ups and banners pop up on your screen. The bottom line is that's usually done through a programming language called JavaScript. It's a program that runs independent of the web page that you're seeing. It can pop up and then lock out your browser. Pop-up ads generate income. So for example, if Coca-Cola pays Google ads 1 penny every time a Coca-Cola ad pops up on somebody's screen, a web browser that you go to could just keep popping up a Coca-Cola ad every time you go to a new page, a Coca-Cola ad pops up. And they're getting a penny every time it comes up. They're logging that you keep seeing the Coca-Cola ad, and you're just sitting there going, I don't want to keep seeing this ad. But they're generating income off of it. They could also, in some cases, use the CPU on your computer, the processor on your computer, which maybe if your computer's not being used, it's kind of idle. They have computations they want to do on their server, and they don't have enough computation time. They can have access to your computer and start running computations on your computer, which is then going to slow down your computer when you go to use it, because your CPU is being shared with this website that is connected to your machine that's using your CPU. Okay, spyware is malware, right? So mal is Latin, it means bad, right? It's badware, okay? So malware can secretly gather personal information about you, information stored in files, cookie data, gather it all together, send it back to the server. It's usually installed by accident, but sometimes installed on purpose. And then there's the idea of browser hijacking, changes your home page and redirects you to other websites. That one I bet everybody's hit at one time. You go to some website and you're clicking on Google, clicking around, going to various websites, and then all of a sudden, every time you bring up your browser, it goes to this new page that you don't like. A lot of times you have to uninstall the browser and reinstall it. That page should go away. Okay. So a virus in the computer science world, not like the virus I may have, the virus in the computer science world is a file that exists on your machine that has the ability to keep making copies of itself. So it can have software, and in the software there are computer instructions that say, create another file next to the file I'm in, copy all the contents of this file into the new file, save the new file, now I have 2 copies of the file, and then run the code in that file to make another copy. It could also run things that are damaging on your computer. So now it's spreading all over your hard drive. Eventually, if it fills up your hard drive, it'll shut down your computer because you have no hard drive to work with anymore. Okay. So the question is, how do you get this virus onto your computer in the first place? You could do it through email, or even just going to web pages and having a pop-up window say, will you give permission to download a certain file? And you say yes because you're not reading the pop-up window, you're just saying yes to everything. And then it downloads a file that you don't want on your computer. Okay. A logic bomb behaves very much like a virus in that it has the ability to replicate itself on your computer. It performs malicious acts, but it does not replicate itself. It attacks when a certain condition is met. So a logic bomb, it doesn't make copies of itself like a virus, but it gets on your computer, and then when certain conditions are met, like if your disk drive hits a certain capacity, it will then run. A time bomb is very similar to a logic bomb, but it is set to run at a certain time. So for example, a file can get on your computer. Let's say you go to a website, pop-up window says, would you approve downloading this file? You say yes, downloads it. And the code schedules with your computer's scheduler that this code should run at 3 a.m. on Tuesday night. Or on April Fool's Day, or Friday the 13th, at a particular time, when your computer's clock says the time hits a certain point, the program would then run. So that's what they call a time bomb. Okay. Worms are files that could get onto your computer, much like viruses make copies of themselves, but they're not making copies of themselves on your computer. They're going through your network, the computers that you're connected to, your friends, and making copies of the file on their computer. And there have been some famous worms through time. A network of computer zombies and bots controlled by a master. Fake security notifications, denial of service. So for example, an example of a denial of service would be, if you ever gone to a website where if you type in your email and an incorrect password 3 times or 10 times, they close your account. Now you can't attempt to get into your account. You have to notify their administrator or send an email or go through some verification, change your password. It's a little bit time consuming. Okay? A denial of service attack, one example could be, suppose somebody wrote a computer program that goes through every user on a website, like let's say Twitter, and tries to log in as every user with 3 bad passwords, counts locked. Go to the next user, 3 bad passwords, counts locked. So they could, at 3 o'clock in the morning, well, there's nowhere in the world that's 3 o'clock in the morning, but at an inconspicuous time, they could run software that shuts down every account on the site. Every user would then have to go through the password reset thing, which would really close the site down. So that's an example of a denial of service attack. A Trojan horse is something that gives the appearance of being legitimate, but it wants to get onto your computer. The story goes, the name of this is, I forget what, there's a place in, I think, Greece called Troy, and people from Troy are called Trojans. And so there's a story, it's like an opera or something like that, where there was this fort, and the people outside wanted to like set off a bomb inside the fort. So they made this big, beautiful horse, and they put the bomb in the stomach of the horse. And they knocked on the door and said, "Oh, take this big, beautiful horse. It's a gift." And they opened the door and they let the horse in, and then they closed the door and then the horse blew up. Something like that. You could check it out. I'm not sure if that's the full story, but something like that. So they call Trojan horses is when it arrives on your computer, it looks fine, and then inside of it there's a problem. So you might install some adware, a toolbar, a keylogger by accident, and then all of a sudden, somebody sends you this an email saying, you could get a free vacation. Click on this link. You click on the link, and then it turns out there's no free vacation. You delete the email, but you may not realize now you've said something on your computer. Okay, ransomware, as you could probably guess by its name, malware that goes on your computer, and you have to pay a fee to get it to stop being a problem for your computer. And Bitcoin is an anonymous digital encrypted currency, which could be used to collect money from you, so that way there's no trace of who the money is being sent to. Okay, so rootkits are, sets of programs allow somebody to gain control over systems, hides the fact that the computer has been compromised, nearly impossible to detect, and mass behavior like malware. Okay, so how do you secure your computer? So we have drive-by downloads. A visited website installs a program in the background with your knowledge. Okay. So if you download from a trusted source, they have the ability to do further downloads on your system. As long as they remain trusted, you're not going to have an issue with it. A firewall is a device that you can add to your network that whenever traffic comes into your computer, you can rule out IP addresses, different servers. You could rule them out as having the ability to come into your server. So a firewall can be used to block different computers from having access to your computer, and also different what they call port numbers, which are programs running on different computers. So for example, you could block anybody trying to get unsecured data off of your computer system. I'm going to cover firewalls also in a more advanced security talk. Okay, antivirus programs and anti-spyware programs are constantly being updated. Norton antivirus software is a very popular one, and you have to keep, as new viruses get generated, the software has to add to your firewall to not permit those type of files into your system. So it's always good to get antivirus software and always keep it up to date, because they are building in their library all the well-known viruses that are out there. And so they can check against those before they end up on your computer. So everyone now pretty much has a wireless router in their house. So what is a router? A router is if you have internet service from your cable company, the internet service comes into your modem. You can connect with a hardwire. You can connect directly into a wireless router, and then through the antenna you can have internet access to cell phones or laptops or tablets. So now all the computers that are connected through your Wi-Fi are connected to each other. So the Wi-Fi connects two or more networks together. Home routers act like a firewall. So we could put firewall software on your router that blocks malicious intended servers from connecting to any of your devices. And then the network address translation, the NAT, secure features of your router, shields devices from private networks, from public networks. Okay. Then the service set identifiers, wireless, your wireless network names, and change for security. And also encryption, wireless encryption can be used. I'm going to also give a talk on how encryption works. But I could basically say this. If you're trying to send a message to somebody, and let's say the message you're sending, let's say you're sending the word dog, D-O-G. If you send the message dog, anybody along the way could read you type dog, D-O-G. What you'd rather do is encrypt it, change what it looks like, so that if anyone read the message, they couldn't understand it, but the person who receives the message can understand it. So let's say, for example, your encryption algorithm was to take any letter of the word you're sending and add one letter to it. So if you wanted to send the message dog, D-O-G, D becomes the next letter, which is E, O becomes a P, and G becomes an H. So you would send the message E, P, H instead of D-O-G. Each of the three letters of the word dog gets incremented in the alphabet by one. So if somebody read your message, they'd see EPH. I don't know what that means. But then whoever receives it has to know how to decode it and then subtract one letter from it. It's obviously a silly encryption algorithm, but it would work. So you could also use wireless encryption. So that way, if you're sitting in your living room typing in passwords into your cell phone and the passwords are going into this router, then you don't want your neighbors knowing those passwords. So you could do that too. Okay, there are also operating system services that you could keep up to date for security reasons. And then let's see, practicing safe computing. So this last set of slides are different things that you can do just because of all the different cybersecurity issues that are out there. You could have standard accounts, administrative accounts, guest accounts. You can have your user access control, notify you to changes made to your computer. So for example, if some malware got onto your computer and started changing permissions for folders to allow your private data to now be accessed to the rest of the world, you would get a notification saying, hey, this folder that has important data to you has now had its permission changed. And you're thinking, I didn't do that. So you know something's up. Okay. Let's see, this is creating strong passwords. So like I say, I'm going to have a talk, I'm going to do a talk on encryption. So when you're using a password, your email address or your username and your password is recorded in a database, let's say at Facebook, if you're a member of Facebook. Next time you log in, you type in your email and your password, and they check it. Did your password, the one you just typed in, does that match the one in their database? If they match, they let you in. Well, they're not going to record your password exactly the way you type it. They're going to record it encrypted. Because if anyone got access to Facebook's database of all the passwords and user email addresses, and there are employees there who have access to it, this would be a disaster. So they're all saved encrypted. So even the employees would not be able to know your password. So now the question is, how easy would it be to just take an English dictionary and type in every single word in the dictionary and run the encryption algorithm to see what it encrypts to, and then find your password? That would be pretty easy to do. So a lot of suggestions when, and like I say, I'll go into more detail when we talk about encryption. But one thing we'd like to remember is don't make passwords the words that are in the English dictionary. It's too easy for someone to figure out what your password is. Mix numbers, letters, uppercase, lowercase, and special characters like pound signs and stuff like that. It makes it very, very difficult to detect your password. Okay. Okay, and like I say, well, I'm going to talk more at another class about encryption, but when you go to a website that's HTTPS, with the S there, the S stands for secure. That means all the messages you're sending back and forth will be encrypted, so nobody can read the messages between you and the server and understand things like what your password is. Okay. Okay. All right. So, okay. So you could have, if you don't want your data being corrupted, you could have backups of your files, making copies of your files. Okay. And then protect yourself from downloading problems. Only download from reliable sources. You could have your firewall could pop up a message. You're trying to download a file from Oracle. Do you agree? And you could say yes. And, don't say yes if where you're downloading from is something you've never heard of. Okay. The rest of this we could just kind of just kind of read through this. These are just suggestions of things to do to be safe when you are using a computer. A lot of times colleges, like the college here, has a manual of things they do not want you to do and they would like you to follow when you're visiting websites, and if you're answering emails, policies to follow. So, all right. So like I say, this is a very introductory, high level, what is security and what are some high level things that we can do about it. I want to go into more details of how these are actually implemented on computers and how they can be blocked.